Hi, I'm Matt Watts, and this is my podcast all about the vastly different experiences we have on the internet. What we look for, what's pushed to us, whether we post, where we post, why we post, the strange adverts we get. For example, do you ever have the experience of an algorithm inadvertently highlighting a morbid fascination? I don't enjoy driving for a variety of reasons. Often when I drive, there are moments where I imagine being crushed by a lorry, but I can't help but watch online videos of bad driving captured by dash cams. They're usually in little compilations of them, and you just sit there waiting for something bad to happen. When Instagram or TikTok shows that to me, I can't look away. If you knew me personally, you might think that this is precisely the kind of thing I wouldn't want to watch. I would say that it's precisely the kind of thing I wouldn't want to watch, and yet still, I watch it. Today's episode is not about morbid curiosities like that, you'll probably be thankful to know, but there is a reference to some stuff that might make you uncomfortable, so please do check the show notes for details. Today's guest is Julia. She's Polish and she's learned a lot from the internet.
I do credit internet for actually teaching me English properly.
I was interested to hear how the English language's dominance is reflected in online bilingual spaces.
I remember when I was younger, there was a lot of memes about people that leave Poland to study abroad, and after 3 months they start speaking like this, the dialect of Ponglish.
Julia started using the internet at quite an early age.
Okay, the very first one, and probably the most significant one I remember, is actually Twitter, when I was 12 years old. And I definitely shouldn't have access to that. It was a lot of things that you kind of wanted to see, but also a lot of the things you didn't want to see and you probably shouldn't have seen as a kid.
And some of those experiences came from an unexpected place.
I was in a fandom sphere. There's a lot of people that go in it, and some of them get hyper obsessed with it because it's an escape from whatever situation they have at home, right? So you would get to know a lot of people, interact with people. It was a lot of people that were kind of older and in the puberty sphere where they were kind of not dealing with their mental health properly, and they were projecting that on me. So that kind of messed me up probably quite a lot.
So what kind of fandom are we talking about?
Oh, that was One Direction. Like that was specifically One Direction, yeah. That was my first ever fandom, yeah.
So the One Direction fandom was bad for your mental health?
Yeah. I mean, not the fandom itself. Like there's always one side which is like extreme and one side that is just there to enjoy the music and share it with people. You just have to find the golden middle in that. After time, if you become close with people online, you feel like they're friends. So you just kind of stop talking about One Direction, for example, or the things you have in common, but you discuss your personal lives and everything like that. And yeah, there were people that I actually had a chance to meet that were, so specifically it was like a 13-year-old or 14-year-old girl. So she wasn't much older than me, but she was self-harming and everything like that. And interacting with her was really difficult for me. But also I felt like that was my friend. But because I was so young, I didn't realize that it's actually toxic for me, right? So I was getting depressed because of her. I was so anxious, worried, and everything like that. And that actually culminated when we went on a summer camp together, because she was from other part of Poland. Yeah, it culminated when she was self-harming in the toilet. I was 13, she was 14 or something like that. I was so scared she was going to kill herself. And that's not something a child should ever deal with, right? So I never spoke to her after that. That was actually when I was like, I think I shouldn't probably be doing this.
Which is quite a mature decision.
Well, yeah, but it took a year, right? And that already sort of seeded? No, sow, you reap what you sow. So that's already sowing the seeds of anxiety in me, probably. Yeah.
And the issues that she was going through, were they related to One Direction fandom, or was that just how you happened to meet?
That's just how we happened to meet. But it was definitely the element of obsession and escapism from reality and just getting lost in the lives of this boy band, and that's all she was thinking about and everything that just wasn't helping her.
And you said she was also Polish.
Yeah.
Is this like the Polish arm of the One Direction fandom? So were you talking in Polish on Twitter about One Direction? Yeah,
but there was, of course, always content coming in English as well. And I do credit internet for actually teaching me English properly. Maybe not speaking it, that's Critical Role. That's also internet. But definitely reading things on the internet in English, even when I didn't know what they meant. That's a big step for someone to actually learn language like that. I remember not understanding what the word happening means, because there was this thing in One Direction where each of them had like their phrases or whatever. And Zayn Malik, his was what's happening. And I didn't know what that meant. And it took me like 3 years to figure it out, but I just kept saying it. But, eventually connecting these dots, that actually definitely pushes you to realize how language is working and why there's an ing at the end, for example. What is it, a question? Is it a phrase? It's sort of these questions that appear.
So you kept using it despite using it online?
Yeah, sure.
Despite it taking then an additional 3 years to be sure what it was you were saying.
Yeah, I'm an avid fan fiction enjoyer as well. So I would write One Direction fanfics. Some of them were so dumb, all PG, because, fan fiction can get weird at times, but it was all PG because I was PG. And I remember writing in these phrases into conversation. The conversation was in Polish, the whole fanfic was in Polish, but there were English phrases in it, just because I got it from internet.
And how did you get involved in being a fan of One Direction in the first place? Was the internet part of bringing these external cultural reference points to you? Or was it like old school stuff like the radio and TV?
TV played a role in it because I was a big fan of Big Time Rush. Do you know what Big Time Rush is?
I don't.
It was a Nickelodeon show about a boy band. And then the show was to create the actual boy band with these guys and it was called Big Time Rush. So I was their fan, and there was a war between Big Time Rush and One Direction, and then also The Wanted, which I think is also
I remember The Wanted, yeah.
And 5 Seconds of Summer, which I think are the only ones that survived. I was a fan of Big Time Rush. But then, I don't know, it just kind of evolved to me liking some songs. And I remember specifically being in this duo with my friend from school and being like, oh, we shouldn't listen to One Direction, whatever. But then we had this one day when we were like, to hell with it. I don't know if I can curse, but
you can say whatever you want.
Like, fuck it. We're gonna do One Direction from now on. And we literally sat down and we sat for 3 hours on Twitter, downloading every single picture of One Direction we can find, and exploring the One Direction fandom on Twitter.
Yeah. Wow, you swapped allegiances.
I did. But Big Time Rush was dying at the time.
I mean, I've never heard of him.
Yeah.
Whereas Harry Styles, still arguably one of the biggest pop stars in the world.
Yeah.
I think you chose the right horse to back.
I think so, yeah.
So if we were to kind of fast forward to now, you live in England, you've studied here for 5 years?
5 years, yeah.
What portion of the stuff you look at online is in Polish and what portion is English?
I would say it's like 80 to 20%, and 80% is English now. But I think that started in high school, actually. So already in high school, most of the stuff was in English because I was already well-versed in English. I was fluent and everything like that. And since then, yeah, it's primarily English.
Were you an anomaly, or is that generally how everyone else in your class was?
My class in high school was 40 people. That's a lot. And I came to high school from a previous secondary school where there was only 18 of us there. We had a really good English education in that class. And then when I switched schools to high school, most people didn't have a fluent ability of speaking English. They had an understanding of it, but I think it was primarily Polish for them. But my closest group of friends, we essentially speak in Ponglish right now to each other. And I think we did at the time as well, but it evolved a bit more. Ponglish is a mixture of Polish and English. And I think it's a phenomenon that's actually everywhere around the world right now, where people will start saying a sentence in their language or in English, and then just put in a word from their own language, in my case Polish, because it's just the first one they can remember and the first one that comes to their mind. There's also Ponglish also involves combining the words together. So for example, instead of, I don't think we had a specific word in Polish for random.
That was so big on the internet at one point.
Yeah, it was massive. And because of that, we have one that is similar, but they have different vibes. And you were looking for the vibe from the word random. So it got adapted. And now we have the word randomowe. And we use it with the endings of Polish semantics, grammatics. I studied linguistics, I should know it. But you get my point.
So you at that age, you've got all these English language influences coming to you via the internet. Does that kind of generationally separate you from people a bit older, your parents' generation, or the people kind of in between?
I can give you a proper example because I'm the youngest child from 3. Between me and my brother, there's 14 years difference. So that's the higher generation, right? Millennials. I mean, my sister also, because there's 9 years difference.
So what age actually are they?
So don't expose me here. So my sister was born in 92.
Okay.
I think that's 32 years right now.
Yeah.
And my brother is 5 years-ish, 4-year-ish, ish, older than my sister. So almost 40.
Child of the 80s.
Yeah, definitely. But Polish 80s. So.
What do you mean by that?
Well, that's communism time until 89. So it's also different. So he didn't definitely grow up with the internet. That's one. Grow up with prominent English, although music was there. So he does listen to English music, but I think he prefers Polish. I don't think he uses Ponglish at all. I never heard him use it. Maybe like some smaller words. He does speak English, but it's not to the perfect level. Then my sister also is sort of at the same level, although she already grew up with a little bit more internet, and I think she's more internet savvy. And I'm the child of the internet, the Gen Zer. So I use it a lot. Like even when I'm talking to my family, I will put in some words just because they first come to mind. And then they will be like, what does that mean? So I have to explain to my mom what it means.
Is there any kickback? Is there any annoyance at this cultural combination?
Surprisingly, no. I remember when I was younger, there was a lot of memes about people that leave Poland to study abroad. And after 3 months, they start speaking like this, the dialect of Ponglish. But I think it's way more popular right now. And I think even people living in Poland right now, they use it as well. So there's no kickback. I haven't encountered it. There is some kind of like ironical laugh about it, but it's not pushback or anything.
Talk to me about Critical Role.
Yeah.
You said before that's how you learn English.
Yeah. So Critical Role is a podcast that started off as a live stream podcast of people playing Dungeons and Dragons, but it's voice actors. I think it's like almost 8 years old now, if not going on 10 years. And I remember watching it, not understanding everything, but it definitely taught me how to speak English, how to enunciate some stuff, although I still have my Polish element to it. There's definitely some phrases that I use every day from that. And it was a big step, essentially, from understanding the written language to learning how to actually say it and say it faster and think in it.
Did you notice a difference in the amount of British and American content that you saw? Because you mentioned One Direction, British band, Critical Role, an American production, I think, right? Mm-hmm. Did you notice there were loads more American things or loads more British things?
Oh, that's a good question. I think when I was growing up and when I was using internet up until this point, up until like 5 years ago, maybe 3, 4, there was more American stuff. I feel like there's been a switch. It's going to sound really rough, but I feel there's a little bit of I don't want to say hatred. What's a nicer word for that? Dislike? Okay, let's just say dislike. I think initially Americans definitely like monopolized the internet. But there's more dislike towards Americans now. And I think now it's more mixed. My favorite part about now is actually that there is a whole like community of people using English to communicate with each other, but from non-English speaking countries. And that's also a different culture in the internet. And that's my favorite one, because we just make fun of Americans and British. So,
is there a specific space where that takes place?
I think you just come across it. Your algorithm must kind of figure out who you are, I think, for that to happen. But if you type in something like Czech memes or something like that, you're going to find a whole bunch of people speaking English and sending each other Czech memes, but they're speaking to each other in English.
As in the Czech Republic?
Yeah, Czech, yeah.
So all the platforms we've talked about, it seems inevitable that they would be initially dominated by Americans, because Reddit, American, Instagram, Meta, Facebook, American, Twitter, now owned by a slightly strange South African, but an American company. Are there Polish platforms? Are there Eastern European platforms that just don't get used by people outside of those languages and countries?
I think there were initially, actually. I think it was more that there were more of them when the internet first appeared. I know Poland had its own. I used it. It was my first social media that I ever used. It was like Polish version of Facebook. It was called Nasza klasa, which means our class as in grade, so like school grade. The point of it was to find people you went to school with when you were like younger, right? But then they introduced games. It was like Facebook practically, but then it died when Facebook came to Poland. I cannot think of a single Polish one. We do have selling websites that are Polish or not English or American. So we do. Not a lot of people use Amazon. They will use Allegro, which is Polish, I think.
What do you think Facebook killed off the Polish equivalent?
I actually watched a documentary about it on YouTube a couple of weeks ago. I think they said something like they were rolling out the updates were too late, considering how upgraded Facebook was already. And then everybody moved to Facebook, and also Facebook became a staple of young people, and only old people stayed on Nasza klasa.
Ironic.
Now it's completely different, right? So yeah, Facebook was like the new American thing that everybody sort of went to. And yeah, at the end of the day, it was just the grandparents using Nasza klasa.
So when it comes to posting online, where do you do it, and how do you decide what language to post in?
I use various social media for my personal reasons, but also because I'm a community manager. So obviously that's going to be in English because it's for English community. So for that, it's English. And that will be, I'm in charge of X, Twitter. I post on LinkedIn in English because everybody professionally that I know are in England. And also because my LinkedIn is also used by young Polish people. So they will understand English. And then on Instagram, I post, I think, only in English, sometimes in Polish. I know my bio is in Polish, but that's because it's a meme, like Polish meme. So I didn't want to translate it because it doesn't have the same flair to it. And then on Facebook, I would say 80% Polish, because that's where all my aunties are and all of my grandmas used to be, but older people. But recently they introduced quite a good translation element. So when I started posting a little bit in English on Facebook, they just hit translate and they react to it anyway. So that's good. If I want my older members of the family to know what I'm doing, I will just post it on Facebook. I'll tell my mom. She's going to tell everybody. I feel like Twitter is a weird medium. I feel comfortable in it because I started so young, which wasn't good. But also that's why I understand, and I don't really care if it gets likes or not. I just spam it.
When you say you spam it, what do you mean? What do you post there?
Like random thoughts. What, you want me to read?
Yeah, if you want.
Yeah. Okay, I can open it up for you. I don't know why. Sometimes I just feel like saying shit posting. So I will just say, oh, one thing about me, I do love myself some lemon water. Got 2 likes. I don't know why.
What do you get out of posting that?
Nothing really.
So why do you do it?
Because I like looking back at it and kind of being like, is this still who I am or have I changed?
So it's kind of like journaling.
I think so, yeah. It's a form of journaling, I think. Like I can look at it in a year and be like, do I still like lemon water? Maybe I do. Or do I still think about this matter the same way? I remember last year I posted a tweet it angered some people because I said, and now I don't agree with it, right? So I went back at it and I was like, that was a dumb thing to say. I said that A-levels, the Polish A-levels is actually not something you have to study for. Because like there's a lot of people that will break their necks for the A-levels, the amount of studying, and I did that. And then I did the A-levels and I was like, I didn't have to do that. So I posted that you don't actually have to study that hard for it. People got angry, okay? They did. And then looking back at it after a year, I'm like, I don't necessarily agree with it anymore. I probably would have said it softer. And I wouldn't be so harsh about it, but... And
does having other people input like that aid your ability to reflect and change?
I think so. Like, I can see their side, definitely. I didn't argue with anybody. I just let them say what they wanted to say. At the time, I didn't agree with them. Now I'm like, you have a point there. Fair enough. You can be stressed about it, and I wouldn't invalidate somebody's, anxiety about it anymore. Or I still don't think you should break your neck for it. But yeah, study for your A-levels. That's good.
Good advice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that is the official line of this podcast.
Yeah, study for your A-levels.
And finally, news coverage. When you're flitting between two different languages online, do you see radical differences in the ways that news is being reported?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely English-speaking media is very America-centered. I used to use Reddit a lot for my news, but most of it, if you actually subscribe to the page of news, the news Reddit, or subreddit, I think it's called subreddit. Yeah, there's a lot of America. And I didn't care for it anymore. So I switched to, I think, TikTok or something. Not a great place, but often you would get very fast information, like sometimes from first-hand recording immediately, but then verify it, right? And that's in English as well. So I would see stuff from Great Britain primarily. But when it comes to Polish stuff, I subscribe to 2 separate channels on Poland on Twitter, where I get notifications from their tweets about something that's happening. And most of them seem like they're objective in language. But there's also a lot of Polish media that is not at all objective in the language that they use. Some of them are more like, we're doing a little bit better here because of something there, right? So it's comparing it like that.
When you say, we're doing better, do you mean as in they're saying because of their misfortune that has benefited us, or we're doing this better than they're doing this?
That.
Okay.
Poland culture in general has something where we really love to compare ourselves with other people. And we love seeing that somebody's doing worse than us. It's deeply rooted. We even have a saying for it. So in Polish, it's Polak Polakowi wilkiem, which means a Pole to a Pole is a wolf.
A pole to a pole is a wolf.
A Pole is a wolf to another Pole. Does that make sense?
Okay, so like everyone is your enemy?
Yeah, pretty much. So essentially it's just kind of like harpies, right? Oh, we love seeing that somebody's doing worse because we're doing better, or our family's doing better than our neighbors, or the neighbors got themselves a shitty couch and we have a better couch or something like that. That's a genuine saying that we have. So I feel like we still do it in the news coverage in Poland. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen in England, because you can probably bring out a few examples for me to check. I just don't follow that much media here. I have a peace of mind. And I kind of stepped away from it in general. But there is difference in language, because I feel like language shapes our identity, kind of.
What makes you say that?
Are you familiar with different personalities in bilingualism? So essentially there's this thing where a lot of people that speak two or plus more languages, they will tell you that they have different personalities in different languages. And on my example, I am way more confident in Polish. I am definitely more outspoken. I don't hesitate to speak. In English, I do have sometimes a lot of anxiety about speaking or taking my turn speaking. I'm not as confident. I'm generally kind of more timid. And I get overwhelmed a bit faster when I have to fight for something that I believe is right or something like that. So I do think that the language we use definitely shapes who we are. And I think growing up and using internet bilingually, you kind of notice it as well. And it might shape you as a person, but you have to sort of find the middle ground between both of them, somehow combine them. Because that doesn't mean that one personality is better than the other one, but, take what's best from both of them, maybe you'll do better.
So would Polish Julia post about really liking lemon water?
Probably not, because Polish Julia would think that that's stupid to say online. Oh, that's not the thing, see? Sharing feelings in language that is not your main one, so in my case English, it's easier for me. I express my feelings better. I name them better. And I'm not afraid to kind of say that I'm feeling bad today, or I'm having a good day today, or I love this, I love that. It's so easy to say that because it's not a language that I grew up emotionally attached to the words to. So they don't carry that much heavy meaning behind them emotionally. It's the same way when we're using curse words. Like I told you many, many times before, the C word doesn't hit me. I know it hits people here, and I didn't realize that before. It doesn't hit me because the Polish curse words are like so much heavier for me, and they're like, they're strong. And I wouldn't say a C word equivalent in Polish next to a lot of people.
How much of that do you think is because English is the language of you as an adult? And how much of it is because it's English? Is English tied to a culture that is perhaps emotionally a little bit more open?
Could be. But I think that's primarily linked to the fact that I didn't grow up naming my feelings in English. So it's kind of easier for me to do it now. Like when I'm talking to my friends about feelings, I will just say it in English and they do the same thing. They do the same thing.
Really? Even to your Polish friends?
Yeah. So they will say that they had a bad day or something and they want to say something really heavy that is really sad. They will say that in English because it's somehow easier to locate the specific emotion because they are kind of assigned, right? You're confused, you're angry. But in Polish language, you might be like, oh, this word might be too heavy in meaning. This is not exactly what I mean. So you're going to say a language, you're going to use a language probably because English is also more simple. There's less amount of words than in Polish, and it's a simpler language. But also, you guys have certain names for certain feelings that we don't really have, like confused. Is it confused?
That's ironic.
Yeah. That is ironic. I get what you mean. I think confused, a lot of people will say I'm confused because we do have a word in Polish, but it doesn't carry the same meaning. It's more stronger than confused. Confused is just like, awkward. That's the word we also don't have in Polish. We do have another word for awkward, which is technically in the direct dictionary as the translation, but I don't think they mean the same thing. It's the vibe. Again, we're coming back to the vibe of the word. It's not the vibe that I'm trying to say.
Do you think that English has that word because we are more likely to be awkward?
Maybe. British people will tiptoe around the topic without telling you that they don't like something until you push them hard enough because you have to pick up on the context cues that they don't like something.
Was that a surprise if you learnt a lot of English initially online? Was it radically different going from conversing with people in English online to coming here and talking to people in person? Yeah.
It was also because, when you're writing something out, when you're reading something out, we had this conversation before, you don't really know what it means until what it can mean. Maybe not what it means, but what it might mean to somebody until you say it to them in person. Because we literally had this conversation about the difference between you do you and you suit yourself. I thought you suit yourself. I've only ever written it out before and read it before. I thought it was just you do you, but it's not you do you. It's mean. And I didn't know that. It was one of my first mistakes when I moved here. I was out partying with people that I just met. And this one guy went missing and we were looking for him. And then we ran into him and it turned out that he was hanging out with somebody else. And I was like, oh, where were you? And he was like, oh, just with the other guys. I meant to say, and I thought I said, the version of you do you. But I said, okay, suit yourself. And I went away. And he never spoke to me again. And, I didn't know. It was my first week in England.
You still friends online with him?
I don't even know his name.
Oh.
I don't remember.
That feels like a strangely tragic point to end this at.
Yeah.
Oh, well. That was Yulia. If you want to hear more of her views on lemon water, you can follow her on Twitter at YuliaOnAir. That's YuliaOnAir. On Instagram, she's Yulia_on-air. And she's the editor of the D&D podcast Pride and Prejudice and Monsters, available wherever you get your podcasts from. If this episode has got you reflecting on your experiences using the internet as a bilingual person or engaging in various fandoms, why don't you tell me about your internet diet like these people did?
Sorry if it's echoey, I'm in the bath. So basically the algorithm can't keep up with me right now because I'm expecting a baby anytime between tomorrow and the next 2 months. And so some of the memes and videos, or whatever they're called these days, I'm getting are aimed at like pregnant women who are 12 weeks, and I'm sending those to my wife like, oh, do you remember when we were going through this? And then other memes I'm sending are aimed at like fathers who have 2-week-old babies, and I'm like sending those to my wife going, do you think this will be us? So the algorithm just can't work out exactly where I am. So I'm getting things for people who are trying for babies, people who have toddlers, and everything in between. So it's quite a unique position where normally it sort of knows, oh, he likes DJing, he likes cats, he likes frogs, he likes raccoons. But at the moment, it just can't figure me out, which I'm enjoying, if I'm honest.
The way I have used the internet the most over the last week or so has been I'm researching something. I've got blog posts, websites, PDFs, so much information that I just don't have enough hours in the day to read it all. So I've been using Google Notebook LM. And if you were not aware of this, then I'll quickly tell you how it works. You can just drop whatever resources you're wanting to paraphrase. In my example, PDFs, websites, etc. And I drop them all into a notebook, and then it creates an FAQs, it creates summaries, but the best thing of all is it creates a podcast with 2 people having a chat, that's what a podcast is, about the topic, and it makes the information I'm trying to absorb much easier to digest.
Okay, so have you ever stopped and thought about how different everyone's online experience seems to be?
Yeah.
It's like we're all surfing different versions of the internet.
Totally.
So today we're going on a deep dive into online fandom.
Okay.
And how these communities shape those unique online spaces that we're talking about.
It's a fascinating topic, and we're drawing insights from 3 episodes of the podcast, What's on Your Screen?
Ooh, fun.
Yeah. Their guests offer such diverse perspectives.
Yeah.
We have a devoted Swiftie, a late diagnosed autistic influencer, and someone who's found deep friendships online.
Wow.
It's a real spectrum of how people connect digitally.
And just like that, the robots replaced me. That was the start of a full 35-minute podcast that was generated by Notebook LM. I'd rather you didn't listen to AI podcasts, but if their summary of the other episodes of this show intrigues you, please do go back and listen to them. And whether you yourself are an artificial intelligence or just a regular, flashy podcast listener, and you'd like to share your internet diet with me, then please do by sending me a voice note on Instagram. You can find me at MattWattsMakesDocs. That's at MattWattsMakesDocs. And until next episode, have a nice week online.